Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. For Sarah, the journey of betrayal, loss, and unexpected inheritance unfolded in the most unimaginable way. Abandoned by her parents at a young age, she was raised by her grandmother, a wise and loving woman who would leave behind a legacy far beyond wealth. But when her grandmother passed away, Sarah discovered secrets that would change everything. In today's life story, we explore how Sarah found the strength to overcome her past and embrace her future. Stay tuned to hear more, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to begin today's story. I never imagined I would see my parents again after they abandoned me when I was just 8 years old. That day is burned into my memory, a permanent scar I carry with me to this day. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when my parents drove me to Grandma Evelyn's house. With only a small backpack of clothes, they told me they'd be back soon, that they just needed some time to sort things out. Be good for Grandma, my mom had said, her eyes avoiding mine. We'll be back before you know it. I can still hear her voice, hear the faint tremor in her words. It was as if she already knew, deep down, that she wouldn't return. I watched them drive off, their car disappearing down the street, leaving me standing on the front porch with Grandma Evelyn. She had always been there for me, and in that moment, she seemed to be all I had left. The first few months were the hardest. I was still too young to fully understand why they had left me. But I knew that I was alone. Every day after school, I would sit by Grandma's front window, staring out at the cars passing by, hoping the next one would be my parents. Every night, I would cry myself to sleep, wondering what I had done wrong, why I wasn't good enough for them to stay. The loneliness gnawed at me, but Grandma Evelyn's comforting presence was the one thing that kept me going. She would always tell me, "You're perfect just as you are, my sweet girl. Some people aren't ready to be parents, but that's not your fault." Her voice was calm and steady, a grounding force in my otherwise tumultuous world. "But I'm here, and I'll always be here for you." Grandma Evelyn wasn't just any grandmother. She was brilliant, sophisticated, and as I would later learn, incredibly wealthy. Yet, you would never know it from the way she lived. Our home was simple and modest, and she drove an old, reliable Toyota. Despite her wealth, she still worked as a high school principal, not out of necessity, but because she loved it. She loved shaping young minds, encouraging them to reach their potential. The only hints of her wealth were her impeccable taste in art and the occasional casual mention of her investments while reading the financial papers over breakfast. I didn't fully understand the significance of these things at the time, but I knew there was something about Grandma that made her different. She was always focused on others, on me, and that's what made her so special. Under Grandma Evelyn's care, I flourished. She encouraged my love of science and made sure that I had the best tutors when I struggled with math. No achievement was too small for her to celebrate. When I won first place in the state science fair at 13, Grandma threw a huge party to celebrate, inviting all my friends to join in. "That's my girl," she exclaimed, hugging me tight. "You're going to change the world someday." I believed her. I believed in myself because she believed in me. Over the years, I stopped thinking about my parents. I stopped hoping they would come back. I stopped wondering why they left. I had Grandma Evelyn, and that was enough. She was more than enough. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Just the two of us against the world. Even though she never spoke badly about my parents, she made sure I knew that their absence wasn't my fault. "Sometimes people make choices they can't take back," she would say, her voice full of wisdom. "But those choices reflect on them, not on you." I stopped asking questions about why they left. I stopped hoping they would come back. I stopped caring. I had Grandma Evelyn, and that was all that mattered. She was my rock, my guide, and my family. She had filled the emptiness left by my parents' abandonment, and I no longer felt the sting of their absence. But life, as it always does, had a way of shifting things when you least expect it. On my 18th birthday, Grandma Evelyn threw me an elegant party at her favorite restaurant. She invited all my friends, and for the first time in years, I felt like everything in my life was exactly as it should be. The atmosphere was filled with joy and laughter, and Grandma handed me a delicate gold necklace with a small key pendant. "This is more than just jewelry, Sarah," she said mysteriously, her eyes gleaming with quiet wisdom. "Keep it safe. You'll understand when the time comes." I didn't know it then, but that pendant would become the key to a whole new world, one I could never have imagined. It was a symbol of the strength I had inherited from Grandma Evelyn, a reminder of the love she had shown me throughout my life. But at the time, I just thought it was another thoughtful gift, a token of her love. Little did I know, It would soon be the key to unlocking the most profound revelations of my life. As I gazed around the room that night, surrounded by friends and family, I felt like nothing could go wrong. But in a few short months, my world would shatter once more. What I didn't realize then was that the love and stability Grandma Evelyn had provided me were about to face an unimaginable test. The day that changed everything was fast approaching. 3 months later, Grandma Evelyn collapsed at school. By the time I rushed to the hospital, she was gone. A heart attack, the doctors said, quick and painless. But for me, the pain was anything but quick. It tore through me like a hurricane, leaving nothing but emptiness in its wake. It was as if the ground had been ripped out from under me, and I was falling into a chasm I couldn't escape. The funeral was beautiful, just as Grandma Evelyn would have wanted it. Her former students filled the church, sharing stories of how she had shaped their lives, how she had inspired them to become the best versions of themselves. She had touched so many hearts, and I could see it in the tear-streaked faces of those who came to honor her memory. But I sat alone in the front row, clutching the key necklace she had given me. It was a symbol of her love and of the bond we shared, and it felt as if it had become my only connection to her in that moment. I tried to be strong, as she had always taught me to be, but the pain was overwhelming. I didn't know how to live without her. I didn't know how to move forward. That's when they appeared. My parents walked into the church as if they belonged there, as if they hadn't abandoned me a decade ago. My mother's hair had grayed, and my father had gained weight, but I would have known him anywhere. My heart stopped and then started racing. They made their way toward me, their faces full of what looked like concern. "Sarah, sweetheart," my mom said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away instinctively, unable to process the emotions swirling inside me. "We came as soon as we heard. We're so sorry about your grandmother." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After all this time, after all the years of silence, now they wanted to play the role of the concerned parents. They never came back for me, never reached out, and now, in the midst of my grief, they thought they could just waltz back into my life. "We know it's been a long time, but we're here now. You'll come home with us, of course," my dad added solemnly. "You're still a minor for a few more months, and we're your legal guardians." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't comprehend it. After all these years, after everything they had put me through, they thought they could just take me back. They thought they could erase the decade of abandonment as if it never happened. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I managed to say, my voice shaking with anger. Grandma Evelyn was my home now. She was the one who had loved me, cared for me, and given me everything I needed to grow into the person I was. She had been my family when they weren't. "Sarah," my mom said again, her voice now tinged with the stern edge I remembered from my childhood. "Don't be difficult. We're your parents. You have no choice in this matter." But just as my father opened his mouth to say something else, a deep voice interrupted him. "She has every choice," the man said, stepping into the conversation. We all turned to see a tall man in an expensive suit walking toward us, carrying a leather briefcase. His presence was commanding, and for the first time, I felt like there might be some hope. He looked at me, then at my parents, before continuing. "I'm James Morrison, Evelyn Montgomery's attorney, and we need to have a conversation about your grandmother's will." My parents' expressions changed in an instant. My mother's eyes lit up with barely concealed interest, while my father straightened his tie nervously. "Of course," my father said smoothly, trying to regain his composure. "We're her only living relatives. After all." Mr. Morrison's face remained impassive as he gestured for us to step into a private room. The tension in the air was thick, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. As we walked into the small room, I noticed that my hand had instinctively moved to clutch the key pendant around my neck. Somehow, deep down, I knew everything was about to change again. I just didn't realize how much it was going to change. Once seated, Mr. Morrison began to methodically arrange the papers in his briefcase. My parents flanked me like anxious vultures, trying to appear concerned, but I could see their eyes darting toward the documents, their minds already calculating the possibilities. Before we began, Mr. Morrison adjusted his glasses and looked at me. "Miss Sarah, would you please show me your necklace?" I glanced at my parents, who seemed confused, but I reached for the key pendant that Grandma Evelyn had given me. Mr. Morrison gave a slight smile and nodded. "Perfect." Then, he cleared his throat and began reading from the papers before him. "I, Evelyn Montgomery, being of sound mind, declare this to be my last will and testament." The legal language washed over me, dull and impersonal, until one sentence made my heart stop. "To my beloved granddaughter Sarah Grace Montgomery, I leave my entire estate, including all properties, investments, bank accounts, and business holdings, currently valued at approximately $47 million. The room erupted in chaos. $47 million? My mom shrieked, her face turning bright red. That's impossible. Evelyn was just a school principal. My dad slammed his hand on the table, his voice rising with anger. This is ridiculous. We're her only children. You can't tell me she left everything to a teenager. Mr. Morrison remained calm, unruffled by their outbursts. There's more, he said, his voice steady. The will specifies that Sarah is to be legally emancipated immediately, with a trust established in her name. The key she wears opens a safety deposit box containing additional documents and instructions. I felt the ground shift beneath me as the realization hit. Grandma Evelyn, my modest, humble grandmother, was worth $47 million. She had lived so simply, so grounded, and yet she had amassed a fortune beyond anything I could have imagined. This revelation, though overwhelming, was just the beginning of a much greater truth that would unfold in the coming days, one that would not only change my life but would also expose the depths of the betrayal I had suffered at the hands of my parents. As I stood there, holding the key to my future, I realized that Grandma Evelyn had given me far more than just an inheritance. She had given me the strength to stand on my own, to embrace who I truly was, and to move forward with the kind of love and wisdom she had instilled in me. My parents' manipulation, their greed, had no power over me anymore. They had chosen money over family, and now they would have to face the consequences of their choices. The Montgomery Foundation, which Grandma had started, was now mine to run. I would use her wealth not for selfish gain, but to help others, just as she had wanted. My first step was to approve scholarships for children who, like me, had been abandoned, offering them the chance to build better lives. As I walked away from my parents' hollow threats, I knew the true legacy of Grandma Evelyn wasn't her fortune. It was the love, kindness, and strength she had passed down to me. I had everything I needed to build my own life. And now, I was finally free. If you want to hear more life stories like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel for new videos.